Dale and Boy Toy.
Hi,
Connie.
Jim.
Connie.
Connie, for
Connie.
Conrad. It's Connie.
Take your choice.
Laura Rouse, you've been with us before, but I
I
can't.
have, but not for a while.
Right. Well, good to have you back. Hi, Susie.
Thank you.
Barbara Byrne on their 70-foot yacht in
Not 70 feet. In my dreams.
okay, in Catalina. I assume it's Catalina.
Yeah.
Stephen Mona, hi. Joanne, hi. The Raybos are with us. Harriet and Stan.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. And the Weisbergs are with us. Great to see you. Marjorie Grace Sayers, are you new to the group?
I am new. Hello.
Hi, are you part of Wilshire Boulevard Synagogue or Temple?
No, I'm part of Sinai Temple, but
well,
I've been to Wilshire Boulevard Temple many times.
Oh, good.
And the back with Rabbi Magnin.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's
How did you learn about our film discussion group?
I learned about it on the Jewish newsletter thing. It's called, I think it was called
Jewish
Jewish.
Journal? The Jewish Journal. Hmm?
What
I
was
didn't
it
know we had
called?
coverage anywhere. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, it was something Jewish LA.
Well, maybe you could text
Am
me.
I
those
am I
links.
allowed to be here, or is this only for
Oh,
members?
no, absolutely
Oh,
not. It's a public
okay.
group. We
Okay.
welcome everybody, and we're glad you're with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Roz Weissman, glad you have to see you with Marjorie. You have two windows open. If you could close one of them, I think you logged on twice. And Steve Zimmerman, good to see you. Arthur Schwimmer, hi, glad you made it.
Where's Arlene?
She's right there.
Arlene Schwimmer? Really? Oh, hi.
So did everybody find this film on Amazon Prime Video, or did you have to go elsewhere to see it?
No, we saw it on Amazon. I found it on HBO Max.
HBO Play, yeah, it's funny that it's on both.
It didn't come on. It was on HBO. We could have saved $5.
It costs on Amazon Prime too.
No, it cost, but it would have been free on HBO if you would let us know.
It was free on
I
Amazon.
didn't know. I'm sorry.
Jim, it's also available on DVD at the library.
Right, on Canopy or at the library?
At the library, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And who else haven't I welcome? Hannah, always good to have you with us. And Roz, good to have you. All right, so let's get going. I saw this film a number of years ago, and I thought it was really good. And I came back to, I thought about it when looking for films to schedule for us. And somebody mentioned to me that it was so dark that our people wouldn't have a good time with it. And then I saw it again a couple of months ago. Was that you, Arlene, laughing? Somebody was laughing. No. And I still thought it was terrific. And I said, God, this is such a morality play. We've got to discuss this. There's just so much there. And then I watched it again this afternoon before dinner. And I said, it's so good. The director is Roger Michel. It was written by Michael Tolkien, who his wife, I forget her name, but she's a marriage and family counselor in LA. He's a writer, has had some career, but it's just so well structured and so even-handed in its understanding of the characters and their strengths and weaknesses. And it doesn't pull punches. I just really enjoyed it and thought it was a great challenge for us to take apart and talk about the multiple points of view in it and how our feelings towards the characters shifted as we saw them go through their paces. I mean, are these two guys fighting it out in the schoolyard or what? Each one just can't wait to do the other guy some bad action. So that's my take on it. As I said in my email, it's really all about how these guys wake up and realize they're not the enemy. And how important it is for us today in this religious and political and wartime climate to realize who is the enemy? How did we get here? How did we let ourselves get here? And it's a matter of backing up and saying, gee, I chose to marry the boss's daughter and he gave me a sweetheart deal. And, you know, was that a pact with the devil? Well, I didn't realize it until now. And Samuel Jackson having to go through divorce and separation for him to learn, you've chosen a life of chaos for yourself. So these are major lifetime revelations that people drop into our laps. And what do we do with them? So I just thought it was kind of magical. And I hope you did too, because it's a fun movie as well, but it keeps you on guessing all the time. So let's start out by talking about, you can't talk about one guy without talking about the other, but what were your feelings about each character, both Gavin and Doyle, when you first met them?
Steve Miller?
Okay, I'm going to make this one comment and then I will let everyone discuss it. We saw this movie when it came out. It irritated me then. I couldn't stand it then. I couldn't stand it now. There were so many legal errors, factual problems. Every premise was so bogus that I couldn't set it aside.
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that because you missed a really good movie.
No, I understand what the movie was, and the morality play was what it was, but there are sometimes when the actual bases of the movie are so bogus. I mean, if it's minor, I can put it aside. This was so bad, it made it impossible for me to really enjoy it.
I'm so sorry, but I have to tell you that the movie was not aimed at smart, experienced lawyers like yourself. Okay, it's just like the other we had, Being the Ricardos. Several people objected to the fact that J. Edgar Hoover never made that phone call. Well, if that ruined the whole movie for you, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Oh, this was so much. It didn't ruin that movie. This was,
but for others, it did.
It's a degree, and there are oftentimes, I find this in Grisham books, 99% of the time when he twists the law, it doesn't bother me for the sake of the story. And there was like one book where it was so bad that it so undercut the story, I couldn't stand it. And this moved into that category.
Okay,
There are some other people who want to comment, so why don't we move it on to Steve Zimmerman and then Howard Weisberg.
Okay, I understand some of what Steve's saying about the way the lawyers and the law is depicted. I mean, I'm kind of sympathetic to that, but you know, it's a piece of fiction, and so you accept it the way it's written. The judges, it's not really the way it works usually in a court of law, but that's okay. I found Samuel Jackson's character more sympathetic. I mean, I know he did some bad things, okay, but he was kind of pushed into some of it. And for the most part, he tried to do the right thing more often than Ben Affleck did, the other character. So actually, I related to Samuel Jackson a little, a lot more. Yeah. But the acting was pretty good. There were times when I felt I needed a tranquilizer in the movie. It was so intense. But it kind of petered out. You kind of got used to it after a while, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you just sparked something in my mind, Steve, that Jackson Doyle is already at the bottom and he's acting out of desperation, whereas Gavin, Ben Affleck, is coming from the top and he's desperate, but he's only trying to save the largesse that he has already, and it does not justify the behavior of either guy. But I think perhaps you were more sympathetic to the Samuel Jackson character because his desperation was not of his own doing, even though his wife says that later, that this is the life you've chosen. But we know from being in the film with him and not seeing his wife's point of view all the time, that he's really a decent guy. He's just trying to get back to where he once was. You know, does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, I certainly felt like hitting the bottle on his behalf at various points of the movie. Yeah, no, I you know, he comes across as fundamentally decent, whereas Affleck's character comes off as fundamentally corrupt in a dirty kind of way.
Or just so entitled he never bothered to look at himself.
Right. Sidney
You know,
Pollack always gets these kinds of roles. He's kind of a brutally intense guy.
I know, he was great. He was great. And a great skunk, wasn't he? But he can do that, you know. And I want to point out one scene when Ben Affleck comes back and says, "I lied to you guys. This is what happened." There's no sympathy. Right out of the box, Pollack comes back punching and says, "We don't give a shit about your morality issues." You know, right away, there's no subtlety at all. And he is that guy for the rest of the movie until he just fixes it in his own way. You know, I thought that was both hilarious and I'm glad he could pull it off. You know, Pollack came out of the Actors Theater and wasn't making it as an actor, but began to make it as a director.
He's almost Shakespearean in his evilness. I mean, he'll turn his own daughter.
Yeah, right.
To his son-in-law at a restaurant, right?
Right. On the other hand, the daughter. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, which I hate to do. The daughter was quite remarkable. You know, the wife. We didn't encounter her until the very end, and she's like a stand-in for her father. She says, "Please, can't you skate this rough edge with us? Because we're a team." You know, and it's like this adorable, attractive woman saying, "It's not take a while on the wild side with me. It's like can't you be corrupt enough to like just live the life we were bred to live?" It was a remarkable thing to put in her mouth, but she's complicit. Yeah. You didn't expect her to be complicit. You know, I don't know what we expected her to be, but the complicity took me by surprise again this time.
Howard, and then Art.
So first of all, I just have to say the thing I often say about certain movies, which is I cannot really stand a movie that is ludicrous, that doesn't make any sense, that defies logic. I'm not a lawyer. I wasn't offended, but I know enough to know that if you lose a document, that doesn't destroy your case. There are copies of the document you can, you know.
But there was a moment where the judge says to them, "You may have a copy, but the original speaks volumes." So she put the onus on finding the original.
She may have said that because otherwise you couldn't have a movie. But it's obviously ludicrous. Every time you lose a document that destroys something, that's not true.
Well, if you don't accept that premise
in today's world, you know, you present it in court.
Did that wreck the movie for you, Howard? Howard, did that wreck the movie for you?
Okay. So number two, this person, whoever created this movie, obviously was interested in making a movie about morality and thought they had a lot of profound stuff to say. It was even, there was a little nubbin of it of the guy, the aspiring lawyer who wanted to be a lawyer and just thought it was normal to just sit in the dark in the office after everybody went home because nobody told him to go home. And he said, "I believe all human beings, most people, all people are basically good, but misunderstandings occur. There are bad apples, bad actors, and so we need to have the law to paper over the things and make us have a wonderful world." That's a point of view, which I can't. I mean, I know some people who believe that. Some people believe the Earth is flat, but we know that that's not true. That's I don't know what the percentages are, but there are some people that are just damn bad people. And the movie certainly shows you that in the movie's opinion,
Okay.
there are these bad people. But then at the end, Ben Affleck has to come out. It's like in the book of Job. At the end, suddenly it shifts gears, and he's Mother Teresa. Suddenly, he's gonna put his father-in-law and his mother-in-law, for all I know, his wife in jail. So
Okay,
the whole movie was just a pile of. I mean, it was good, it was an somewhat interesting movie, nice looking people, but I don't.
Okay, Howard.
We have a few different
No,
opinions.
excuse me. I
That's
have
my
to
opinion.
step in.
Of course, I realize that someone else might not have my opinion, but that's my opinion.
Thank you for your humility. I have to step in here because I have said a million times before.
Yeah,
Details-
don't let a bad story get
No,
in the
don't
way
let the
of a good
facts get in the way of a
movie.
good
Facts,
movie.
which I totally reject.
Well, fine, but I hereby, now and forever, as a Talmudic voice in this group, banish all such comments going forward because it sets us back. Okay, what makes you think that the young lawyer, the aspiring lawyer, was proposed there in that place in the film to represent the ideals of the filmmaker? He was there as an ironic foil to say, you see, this kid is so naive, he doesn't realize how the game is played.
I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say that that the filmmaker brought it up to sort of show that he knew this idea, and this is the topic sentence for the movie.
He was ridiculing the idea himself. The filmmaker and writers are very savvy. They know this kid is just full of ideals and nothing practical. So for you to turn against the movie because you didn't like the kid is to miss the point. It was ironic. It wasn't proposed as something positive. It was a cynical proposition. Where it was placed.
It wasn't that I didn't like the kid. I thought it was insipid to bring up the thing in the first place.
Well, I'm
I'd like to
sorry.
get some, Jim, I'd like
Whatever.
to get some other comments.
Okay, yeah, let's continue.
Yeah,
Okay.
you always
so-
say that.
So we have Art, Brad, Susie, and Frank.
Well,
Art, you're
just to remark on this last point, there are actually young people who do enter paths of life out of idealism. And I don't think that was a totally unrealistic thing for that young lawyer to say. He was still perhaps naive, but he may have had those idealistic views that propelled him into the profession. What he'll learn along the way is something else. I thought one of the points of the movie, though, was that, Jim, you spoke about people finding out that the other person is not really their enemy. I think one of the points of the movie was that each one of these principal characters was his own worst enemy.
Right.
And how each one finally saw that, in part because others pointed it out, and in part from self-realization of the terrible things that each one did to the other,
The drama.
that they came to want to make amends and live a better life.
Let's jump ahead then.
I thought that was a strong message in the movie.
It is, but I'm looking through my notes and I'm trying to find the moment when each of them realized, hey, I have to make amends. I have to change the direction of this conflict or my attitude. Let's think about that for a while before we come back to it. That would be something good to end with.
Righty. Next is Brad, then Susie, then Frank. Anybody else have their hand up? LaDonna. Okay. Brad, you're
Jim,
on.
I want to echo what you said. These discussions about accuracy have really become tiring. This is a work of art. Did we not learn about poetic license when we all went to high school? This is a work of art. And instead of debating endlessly about the accuracy, we should be asking why. Why did the author take those liberties? Was it for an aesthetic effect that he did it? Was it for a psychological effect? Why? Why did he take the liberties? Instead of getting angry because he did. Is Philip Roth's The Plot Against America less of a classic because Franklin Roosevelt won the election and not Charles Lindbergh? I mean, these discussions, these endless discussions about accuracy are just missing the point.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one other thing. What I particularly enjoyed about this movie was the fact that I don't think that the director he did not take a moral position. Each one of us was compelled in our own heads to debate the morality of these characters. Did they sufficiently atone for their errors? And you know, that's something that each one of us has to come to terms with.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. I think what you're describing is that we have to look at all these films in terms of what is the function of that character or that event to the whole story. It's not about how does that relate to reality, but how does it relate internally to the movie? This is something I tell my students all the time. You know, you set up a language and a set of assumptions, and the value of the film is its narrative propulsion, its momentum through it, the line it chooses to take to tell us something about ourselves, about each other, about the world. And you have to understand these scenes from their purpose in the whole movie as they reflect upon what's come before and what's going to come after. And when you then take a look at a factual inaccuracy, you can say, oh, they needed this factual inaccuracy in order to accomplish this with the overall message of the film, which may hopefully redeem the film with you, because, you know, this film is a good-hearted film. And yeah, it's a Hollywood ending, you know, and the bad guys got their comeuppance, and one of the good guys figured out a way to do it without killing them. You know, you're going to pay penance, you're going to pay back the $3 million, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And you're going to, make sure this guy gets his loan and his house and his wife back. It's more pat than the real world is. I acknowledge that, but there's still lessons here. And, let us dream of, gee, it would be great if we could solve all our problems this way. But the argument between these two guys is so well drawn out. I mean, I have my notes, it's constantly back and forth. One guy tries to trump, excuse the term, the other guy in terms of bad behavior. And they're both superb at it. I mean, that facts, better luck next time. It's not just, no, I won't do this. It's like, you said better luck to me, I'm saying better luck to you. It's like, it's brilliant in its incisiveness and the depth of thought that each of these plays that one has upon the other, the devastation it causes. So I really admire the structure of it. And it does come back to structure. So rather than berate any individual among us who had a hard time with the details, it's like, look at what it does to the rest of the movie, not what it does to you. And then maybe the rest of the movie will work on you in a deeper, better way.
So, yeah, Susie, Frank, LaDonna, and I just want to comment, since the attorneys are weighing in and I'm one of them, that I spent a lot of time in family law courts. And while that was probably, an exaggeration of the kind of arrogant behaviors some judges have, it's certainly an exaggeration of some reality as well. So, there are judges who are just extraordinarily arrogant, and there are judges who are wonderful. And for the plot, this worked for it. And I loved the movie. I just loved it.
Okay.
So Susie, and then Frank, and then LaDonna.
Susie, unmute. Unmute, Susie, lower left. There you go.
All right, I love the movie also. I want to tell everybody especially you, Jim, the one thing I have learned in this class is not to be so pickayunish of details and are they true? Like in the olden days before this class, the way he ran away from the accident and he gave him the check. He said, just here's a blank check. And he left the car there and Samuel Jackson left his car there. I mean, before I took this class, I would have been picking that apart and it would have ruined the whole movie for how unrealistic that scene was to me. But and I commend you, Brad, for what you said. I agree with everything that you said. So no longer pick movies apart.
Okay, Susie, let's go back because I think it's important for other people to hear. At the scene of the accident, when Ben Affleck rushes away, you said, you know, a year or 2 or 4 ago, you would have like been infuriated with Ben Affleck, but you didn't feel that way this time. What made the difference? How could you see the two guys' position? Remember, both are running to a court date. So how did you see them as being equivalent, not equal, but equivalent?
Well, realistically, I don't see anyone giving someone a blank check and saying this is to fix the damages in your car.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And Samuel Jackson, he was honorable. He wanted to give his license. He wanted to give all this information, and he was shocked. He was shocked that he ran away.
Yeah.
So, you know, both of them, their personalities came out, but in a
Okay.
very exaggerated way.
Right. I want to pursue that a little further because this theme of what is the right thing to do is riddled. The movie's riddled with it. And, you know, Jackson as a Republican, oh my God, what a slip of the tongue. As a recovering alcoholic, it's all about what's the right thing to do for myself, for my family, where have I gone wrong? This is a primary issue for him. And he's stubborn and it comes up once again. No, we have to do this the right way. You know, he's by the book because as though the book will save him. And frankly, this relates to our Torah study often where we talk about, is it the letter of the law or the spirit of the law? You know, what is the right way to be? And he's clinging to this as a lifeline. Of course, when you're a recovering alcoholic, doing it the right way is terribly important. I mean, I'm not, but I can see how that's an important character trait for him. But it persists through the movie where he's gobsmacked at the cruelty that Affleck levels against him. And then he finally takes matters into his own hands when he realizes he has some power. So this theme of do the right thing, it's as eloquent as Spike Lee's movie is. And I'd love for us to continue with that throughout the discussion tonight.
So we have Frank, LaDonna, Mona, and Stan.
Okay, it's not Frank, it's Yvette.
I will follow
Yvette.
Yvette.
Okay,
First of all, as far as it not being correct to every letter of the law, whether it's law or it's medicine or it's architecture or it's fashion, most shows have lots of errors and lots of things that aren't perfectly correct. So anyone who's an expert, if they want to bother picking apart things, they can do it with any movie, any TV show, any bit of art. There's always going to be something, if you know enough about it, that you're going to find this isn't correct. It's not right. So I agree. We just forget about it and we go on. I really thought it was a great movie. And I thank you, Jim, for picking it. The other thing that I would like to bring up is, which nobody's brought up, is the black-white issue. Here you have a Black man who's had a lot of problems because he was an alcoholic and he's trying to get straight again. He obviously has a problem where he can't control his temper and he fights constantly. And he we gather he hasn't made a lot of money in his life because he was so shocked at being able to receive the loan. And then we have this white guy who's really living a great life. He's, as far as wealth goes and as far as position. So you have these two different structures meeting together and having this accident. And the guy who has all the money doesn't really care. He just wants to get to court, and the other guy wants to get to court too for personal reasons, which are really important and are controlling his life. And here he is left on this road with no car, no transportation, nothing. And the other guy just drives off, the guy with all the money and with everything going for him. So this bothered me. And it took me a while to sort of get over it. And as far as the young student, the young lawyer coming into the office, I thought he was great. I mean, I thought that was very plausible and a lot of young people come in for a job and they really are very altruistic and they see the good in everything. And I'm sure we've all interviewed those kind of people. So I thought that was very realistic.
I'd like to add here that we said this is kind of a morality type study of morality. I think the movie shows how difficult it is to do the right thing. It's much harder to do the right thing, especially when life has its complications, and how easily you can be drawn into the negative aspects, the negative behavior, and counterpunching. He did that to me, I'll do it to him. How difficult it is. And that was something I thought about this. And secondly, from the writing and from the production of it, I saw it a second time. We saw it one night and then we watched it again last night. I was just as tense, it became just as, even when I knew perfectly how the ending was going to be, my emotions got played all over again. So I thought it was a very good film from that perspective as well.
Okay, so we have LaDonna, Mona, Stan, and then Iris.
Oh, I just feel that was a wonderful film. Thank you, Jim. The Do the Right Thing scenario was through the whole movie, going back and forth and trying to change what the mistakes they had made and retract their steps and stop and redeem one another and make it right and then get mad and fight again, and the things that they did. I just really enjoyed the movie. But from the perspective of law, I agree with Fern because my husband was a lawyer. Some judges can be assholes and some can be really nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, LaDonna. Mona?
Okay. I saw the same errors that Steve saw, but I treated the movie as a morality play. It's a fable. I do think there's a difference between a fable told in broad brushstrokes and an intelligent, well-crafted, nuanced story. What I found really impressive in this movie was the use of conduct and action to demonstrate character. I thought the movie was absolutely superb in using every moment, every interaction to reveal not only Gavin and Doyle, but everyone else. And I was struck. We saw it last night, and I had seen it when it first came out. I was struck by the similarities between the two characters. They're both very hot-tempered. They take action very quickly without thinking. They lack empathy at moments when they're very excited. They don't listen to women. I was absolutely amazed at the parallels between the two of them. And I thought Ben Affleck did an absolutely superb job being one of these people that Tom Wolfe calls masters of the universe in Bonfire of the Vanities. Somebody who's just walking around thinking he can run the world. I was very impressed by it's efficient. all the conduct, the way, even the way the wife is introduced. I wasn't surprised by the way Amanda Peet acted, because the way she moved, the way she talked to him, the little kiss she gives him, "You have to come to lunch." It was very clear with the, iron fist and the velvet glove. She was not going to take any prisoners. You're coming to lunch. But she delivers the message in a very high class aesthetic fashion.
Yeah.
The way he treats his old mistress when he's upset, so he just interrupts her conversation. It's like, I don't give a shit what you're doing with your time. Listen to me. So I thought Tolkien is the guy who wrote The Player, right?
Yeah.
And then he's a really, really, and I think he wrote The Rapture too.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a vile, in my book, it's a vile movie, but that's
I think The Rapture is terrific. I thought it was a wonderful.
I'm sorry. When the mother sends her daughter to death, I lost. You have to understand my history with cults, right? So we'll talk about that another time.
But anyway, my bottom line is, I thought the acting was outstanding.
Yeah.
But and I do think Steve and I disagree somewhat on this. I think race actually was treated very well in the movie, and the scene where it becomes the clearest is when the two guys from the bar attack Doyle outside. I'm not sure they would have done that if he hadn't been a black man.
Probably not. Yeah, you're right.
And I thought they weren't pounding you, they weren't hitting you over the head, but that was a reality at all times. That was part of their interaction.
But you see, that was a trigger for Samuel Jackson to fly off the handle, right. Because he's so vulnerable that these guys really weren't going to do him that much harm, but he lashed out first because he was at his breaking point because of what was going on with him. He was in a bar, he had to call his sponsor. He was very vulnerable in that moment, and he reacted with anger, not anything else. So
they were not planning something kind.
No. They wanted to humiliate him. They were not nice people, and couldn't see the virtue of his story because all they could see was, you insulted our fathers, and that wasn't the point of the story at all. But, people get a bug up their bottoms for, half the story or a quarter of the story, not for the real reason for the story.
So Stan and then Iris. Stan, you want to unmute yourself?
Fran, are you referring to me?
Yes, I can't tell the difference because I can't see you and I just see both of your names. Hi,
Yeah,
Harriet. Go ahead.
It's Harriet, and I have two comments to make. I am a non-lawyer, but I found one glaring error that I could not overlook, which is that he didn't look in the file and find that each of these guys was going to get 1.5 million, that he had to have a false fire alarm to go into the file. That was outrageous and off the charts. But I do want to talk a little bit about the moral equivalency. They were equally matched up to the point where the lawyer, Ben Affleck, called the school and set up a phony alarm so that the father would come in and be arrested. He lost all sympathy. He lost all equivalency at that point. And as far as I was concerned, he should have been thrown in jail himself.
Right. I could see why you say that. That was the most aggressive, calculating, destructive thing done in the movie to another. Well, of course, you have to remember that destroying the guy's credit history, was also very damning. It was just abstract.
Right. Iris, unmute yourself.
Yeah, this movie, it struck me as there's a line in the movie that Affleck's boss says when he says, it's you have to achieve balance, he says. And he says that at the end of the day, he feels that he does more good than harm. And I think it's really about, the movie itself is about extremes of good and extremes of harm. And it also struck me that the two characters, the outlying characters, the young lawyer who's so naive and the wife who's so cynical, they exemplify those two extremes of behavior and belief. And it's even more than belief. It's the being, the person who that person is. She was raised to be cynical, that girl. And just as that young lawyer still had the faith that the law could take care of whatever we needed it to do. So to me, that whole movie was about opposites, black versus white, good versus evil. It just was, in some ways, I feel it was a little overdone. But other than that, I really think, I think it was a very catching movie.
Yeah.
One I would want my kids to see.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the Sidney Pollack line about overall, I think I do more good than harm. What other measure do we have? And it's like, he's such a good lawyer. He's reduced the good evil controversy to a balance that falls in his favor. So it's like a remarkable stroke of legalese or legal argument, delivered with such sincerity, but it's also terribly cynical.
It's the ultimate rationalization.
Right. And it's like, we can do that, but look at the harm you've done, and indirectly your harm has helped me destroy this black man's life. And he's slowly beginning to realize his own culpability. I know that Harriet said he should have looked in the file before, but it wasn't in his own office. And there were moments where he said, why didn't I look into this more deeply? It's part of the soul searching that the Ben Affleck character has to go through. And
well, I also think, when things were good for him, before all of this happened, he wasn't about to go looking for a file.
Right, because he was on the other side, but he felt pushed. If you look at just his character alone, his wife's pushing him to do the wrong thing. And he was trying to be true to his wife, which is why he broke up with Toni Collett. Remember, there's that discussion about, if we had not been caught, what would we have done? But we stopped it before anybody knew. And then later on in the movie, you realize, oh, I knew about her, just like I knew about my father's girlfriend. And didn't you? And he tries to lie. And he says, well, I didn't know what went on for 20 years, but I knew what was going on. It's like, we're all this living hypocrisy. That's like life. And these people got nailed for it. And it's one of the great accomplishments of the movie. So thanks for bringing that up.
Barbara would like to say something.
I thought what the movie did, I liked the movie a lot. I thought what the movie did is it stripped both characters to their core. We saw them getting all their layers got torn away from them. And what we ended up with was the core of both of them. And they both had to face their own core. And then they ultimately had to look at each other. And I thought that was a really interesting experience as the movie watcher. And that's what I felt. I felt I was watching them be stripped of all the artifice of their lives, and that they just ended up in this core place, which is painful and liberating for both of them.
I think that's a great comment. And I felt the same way, where they're in trying to outdo each other, they're reducing themselves to the bottom, both of them. And how important a lesson is that for all of us, that, alcoholics say you never recover until you hit rock bottom. And William Hurt says that as the sponsor says that to him. So you've hit rock bottom now. It's like, that's where the way up begins.
I think William Hurt said something else. He said, you live and want chaos. And I
Yes,
think
right.
that was a trigger moment for him where he
Yes, it
acknowledged
was.
to himself that the chaos he was creating in his life wasn't only about his alcoholism,
No.
and that he needed to come to terms with that before his life could
Right.
improve.
Right. His jousting with Ben Affleck was irresistible to him. He
Right.
he
He liked
craved
it.
the adrenaline that came from that conflict. And his wife tried to tell him about that, but she had to talk in circles until the jail scene, which is, my God, that she was a wonderful actor, that woman, with quivering lips and all, where she says, no, it's over. You know, we think that, you know, she's headed towards forgiveness. No, I'm going to Oregon, which is the final, it's the death blow to him. So he's at rock bottom at that place. It was just lovely the way the pressure was put on both guys.
Steve Zimmerman, Brad, and either Frank or Yvette, don't know. Steve.
Thanks. I was just going to add that even by the end of the movie, though, Ben Affleck's character, I mean, he's gained some insights into what he had done and the harm he had caused and the tragic side of it. And he's sort of trying to right some wrongs. But it's still very Machiavellian the way he's now adopted this kind of balancing of good and evil thing, like Stanley Pollock had taught him in his law office. And so he's going to keep the file in a quote safe place, and they'll never know where it is. And they're going to give back that $3 million they stole. And he's going to hold that over the guy's head like the sword of Damocles or something. I mean, you know what it reminded me of? I've been watching The Crown, the TV series The Crown, and it's very much like the way the family, the royals, work in terms of managing their relationships with one another, even their intimate ones. It's all very utilitarian and pragmatic and cold-blooded, actually.
Well,
I didn't think at the end that that he was going to be a different human being. He was still playing, he was still doing all of the tricks and trying to get it his way, and he was still lording over a different group of people. He didn't fundamentally change. He just kind of acknowledged the harm he had done to one person, but fundamentally he was going to keep all the riches. He was going to keep his fancy life. I thought that the character played by Samuel Jackson had a bigger transformation, a much bigger shift of who he was.
Well, let me pursue that. In a way, Jackson was more at the bottom of his life because he had nothing else, whereas Affleck could have gone to work for another law firm, or, you know, it's a privilege that each guy enjoyed or didn't enjoy. And Jackson's decisions were not predicated upon his lifestyle or his pleasures. It was like, choose chaos or choose a loving family. That's the choice before him. Whereas Affleck was trying to have it all and save it all, and he turned the system against its evildoers. And this is very interesting from a moral and ethical point of view. Can we do good by turning a bad system upon its evil players? You know, it's like it's the ends does the evil ends justify, or does the evil means justify a good end? And, you know, in terms of American drama and American movies, we love the hero who beats the evil guys at their own game. You know, does that mean it's right? Well, it certainly righted a wrong for Samuel Jackson. What does it say about Ben Affleck? We don't know as much. You know, his future, will he go back to his wife? Will he go with Toni Collett, you know, who was a wonderful foil for him? I mean, let's talk about a thankless role. You know, when he tries to kiss it, when she's consoling him on the cement bench outside the office building during the phony fire drill, and he tries to kiss her and she just, you know, pulls herself away. You know, she wants nothing more, but she's also disgusted by his gesture. It's just these nuances that are just make this film so real and so deep for all the characters that have such a stake. it's really a wonderful film. It didn't get much notice. It's 20 years old, by the way. And I think it did a better job of enunciating and delineating the finer emotions and reasons of people than most films do today.
Funny how Tony
Brad?
Collette was the one who knew about The Fixer, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she was part of it. She knew, she was culpable and could live with the system too, and add those, connections, but didn't like them. She was a voice of realism.
So Brad and then Frank or Yvette.
Yeah, in this morality play, I was interested in the role that religion played. After all, we're told at the very beginning it's Good Friday, and then we have this fabulous scene of Ben Affleck at the church in the communion box.
Confession.
A confession box. And what appears to be the message appearing to be the inadequacy of religion to help us with these moral issues. And then on the other hand, we've got AA, which is, and that AA meeting can be seen as the mirror image of the mass at church. And to a certain extent, that seems maybe to have a more positive impact. It keeps Samuel Jackson from taking that drink, but then he goes on to descend into that self-destructive behavior. And at the very end, we realize that he has totally missed the point of AA. It's not just about the drink. So, yeah, what kind of statement was the movie making both about organized religion and these alternatives to organized religion in terms of helping us to navigate moral issues?
I think that's a great question to ask. And I think it's to the film's credit that it made you ask it. I think it leaves our moral lives in our own hands. And that's the point. Morality is about doing the right thing because it needs to be done regardless of who's watching. We don't do it for the rewards. We do the right thing because it feels like the right thing for all concerned, or as many concerned as possible. And that's a big step for any person to take. And, William Hurt is just the conscience, whispering in his ear about, don't celebrate the champagne, and you miss the point of AA. It's your addiction is chaos, and you love this struggle. You can't ignore the fight that destroys you, which he engages in with Affleck. So,
Frank.
Who's next?
Frank.
Yes. Someone had talked about the scene where the foul is returned, and Affleck character, has it, but at that point he said he doesn't. Now he doesn't need it. It almost reminded me of an old O. Henry short story, but.
Right.
I think that the movie could have just ended there. Here they are. They've been through all this. They're reconciled with each other, it seems, to an extent. They realize the wrongs they've done and the mess ups that it all created. And we're left with a quandary, again, just as much as later on, if we didn't have that dinner scene and the throwing down of the fowl and, the lording it over his in-laws and the firm, I don't know whether that added it at all. I think it could have stopped earlier.
I think you're right, that it would have been a very more cynical ending to say, the crooks, took care of it all and we're powerless to do anything against it. But in the spirit of rousing the masses, to feel good about their own self-righteousness, the filmmakers said, well, let's have the good guys get their comeuppance.
Well,
When
as you said, that's the Hollywood ending.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
realistic is we're left wondering after having both having gone through this experience from their different backgrounds, what do they do now? And
Well,
I don't think we're really any closer to that answer with.
Well,
the
who
rest of
knows
the-
what studio executives said you have to have a happier ending than that.
Sure, sure.
You know, it's conjecture at this point, but
Mhm.
you're right. You're absolutely right that the movie had run its course with the realization, holy shit, the lunatics have taken over the asylum and we didn't know it while it was happening. And this has a lot of political ramifications. I don't want to go there, but it's like, when are we going to wake up to what we're doing, you know, in our treatment of people in their everyday lives?
Right.
Joanne and then Arlene.
Yeah, Jim, you asked earlier when you thought the characters realized what they were doing and started the turnaround. And I was thinking when Ben Affleck saw the kids come out of the school and
Yeah.
how terrified they were and their mother, I think that's when he really started to think about what he was doing.
You're right. The turn there. You're
Mhm.
so right. Yeah.
Thank
that
you.
was the beginning of conscience with him.
Arlene.
Yes, I don't have a lot to say, except that I thought the film was terrific. And we haven't talked about the directing. I don't know about you guys, but I felt that there was so much reality to the way the scenes were going from the automobile accident. Didn't you feel New York City? I mean, everything that was happening fast and pushing, and Ben Affleck's character was having a meltdown, which I can totally understand. I remember once when I was in court with my briefcase, I'm at counsel table, open my briefcase to find the wrong file in it. And the panic that you go through when you're standing in front of the judge and you're not prepared because you have the wrong file with you. I felt all of that stress, that anxiety that he was going through. I thought the direction was terrific. The subtleties were emphasized, but subtly. Tony Collette, I thought, did a terrific job as the voice, basically, of his conscience. It was a diverse film, but I thought very satisfying. Thank you.
Roger Michelle, who passed away in the last year or two, was a really lovely director. My brother-in-law actually recorded sound on this film, and I think one other, and said, this director is one of the sweetest people he's ever worked with over 45 years in the business. And how could he not be? So it's hard to tell where all those good feelings came from and that awareness came from, but you have to believe he was involved in the script, even though he's not credited as a writer. But he just brought an awareness to it. And the structuring of the film, I don't know if it was written or edited or what, it was marvelous. It didn't sit still for a moment. The first half hours, you're just constantly going around, you know, from characters to point of view to another character to their concerns, back and forth, back and forth. It was really very energetically driven. It's only 98 minutes, by the way, which is on the short side. So that shows you how much they packed into it.
Jim, I just wanted to mention.
Go ahead, Art.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Art.
Roger Ebert was still alive when this movie came out in 2002. He reviewed it. He called it the best movie of the year.
I could see that. Yeah. It's like, it's very rare. And it seems to have been forgotten. And to see these two guys who like rose so much higher in their careers after this film, it's like, why aren't people citing it? You know, and to see them as both young men, Sam Jackson was like amazing in terms of his articulation of the emotions of every moment, and Affleck as well. I mean, this was great work.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, my comment's going to be kind of a brief one. My Brad brought up that it's Good Friday. The reality is the entire film is a kind of morality play that would have been performed on Good Friday, which has to do with the trial of Jesus, the lashing, the crucifixion, and then, of course, the resurrection. And you needed that resurrection scene at the end of the film for the morality play to be complete.
Okay, so you're saying that the New Testament was really basically current Hollywood?
Yes.
But you're right. I mean, that's what the scriptures are, regardless of your religion. It's a document of human frailty and manipulation and good and evil. This is what it's all about. So thank you for bringing that up, though. It was fun.
I just want to add one more thing, and that is the one who got the job ultimately was the one who lasted longest, and that was Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
The young man?
The lawyer.
The lawyer got the job. Well, yeah. Okay, you could argue that, counselor. But who knows if he was happy in 5 years? Remember that was the.
We don't know how long he was going to last in the job. It could have lasted one day.
All the lawyers are chuckling, but I'm a spouse, so I have some knowledge.
So either Steve or Mona. I don't know who wants to speak.
It's Steve, and I just have a brief comment. The one thing I really liked, and it was very minor, was the wife in the dinner scene. You could just see she was shocked to learn how corrupt her husband was, and yet their daughter was 100% in the know. Yeah. And I just really liked how that whole dinner scene within the family played out, and just the wife's expression. She's hardly in the movie, and that scene I really loved.
It was great. Yeah, I agree.
Pardon me, I just have to intercept here. It's Frank. I thought the best line in the whole movie was in that scene. I think I'll have the halibut. It reminded of me of the ovary. I want to have what she's having.
It was snapper, not halibut.
Snapper, right? Whatever. I thought that was terrific.
Gail, unmute yourself.
During the beginning part of the movie, I felt that the lawyer thought that the signature was legitimate that he had on the paper. And then later we learned that it was really not, that Mr. Dunn was really too ill to have done it. And I wonder if anyone else was surprised at that. I thought that the lawyer didn't know that the other lawyers were stealing money earlier, that this was a new thing for him.
I think, Gail, that he didn't know, Ben Affleck didn't know that he was set up to take the fall, because he's the one who got the signature. And at that moment, he's the one who is morally and legally obligated to say, this man is too frail and ill to know what he's signing. So you see, the partners who took the money sent the son-in-law to do the deed so they could be covered. And he just assumed, as a naive young lawyer who was being fed from the silver spoon, that, well, of course, everything we're doing is on the up and up. And then he learns he was the fall guy, and the man who did the most culpable, well, not the most, but something very culpable that could risk everything for him. So he was naive before.
Yeah.
I think I didn't see him as naive as much as just not wanting to rock the boat. He wanted his life, and he knew. I think somewhere it was not such a big surprise. I think he was pretty clear in a lot of ways what was going on. He just didn't want to look at it, and I think that was what was, to me, the brilliance of the movie. As I said before, he had to face himself at some point, and it was part of his character, I thought, from the beginning, because I thought he portrayed somebody who really bought it, but not really.
Barbara, that's exactly right. Because if you think back to the young law student who wanted the internship, he's saying what he should have known all along about his own career. How will you feel about this in 5 years when you learn how really dirty it is? So it's this he's facing himself in that moment. And you're right, he should have known, but didn't he look the other way?
I don't see other hands up. Does anybody else have a hand up that I'm not seeing? Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to add that he clearly had defects in his character right from the get-go, right? So it was a slippery slope down for him. It wasn't going to take much of a push to go down into a moral abyss. He found it very easy to lie right off the bat about almost everything on the spur of the moment. As soon as the accident occurred, he started lying to everybody and tell the court this and tell the court that. He couldn't tell enough lies, and he just dug himself in deeper and deeper. But clearly those defects were there at the get-go. The only other thing I'll add is I'll echo what someone else said, that the movie has a certain intensity to it and a grittiness and a rawness that was very real and disturbing in a way. But the acting was very effective in that sense, and it was very affecting.
I wanted to comment that I think, as much as I love the movie, that it was not a particularly Jewish take on how people do the right thing, because it portrayed it as a moment when they kind of get a flash. Oh, I'm going to do the right thing now because I've seen the light. The Jewish concept is that we have to practice doing the right thing all along in the small things, so that the muscle that needs to come into play when things are difficult is already strengthened. And that wasn't portrayed in the movie. It was like, there's an epiphany and you see the Lord and you see right. So I just thought it was an interesting side note. It didn't take away from the movie for me, but it's certainly a different way of perceiving how one comes to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Fern, that it's very much the Hollywood way to hyper dramatize these conversions of conscience, because to articulate the nuances of the little moments that guide our lives, that's another movie. This was, so you're absolutely right, but
my comment perhaps fits with the comment, of Jeff's comment that this is kind of a passion play or an Easter Good Friday story.
Yeah.
And it has a certain religious or philosophical bent.
Well, there is that, the scene in the confession booth that someone cited. He says, well, we want meaning. The priest says you don't need meaning because the end of the sentence is because you have God or faith. And Ben Affleck storms out of there because he says, no, I demand meaning. And of course, from there on, he takes matters into his own hands. And I think that's when he goes out and he calls the school. So he takes the wrong instrument in his hands because he's so pissed off and so desperate. He didn't find the answers in religion. And that's okay. I mean, it could be any religion. The point is that morality is an instrument of ourselves. It's something that we have to embrace and choose to be. For, as you said, it's how we have to live our lives every day, not just in dramatic moments, and how all of life's a preparation for those moments when you have to decide. So, this is just a great film. And the more we talk about it, the more I feel like why isn't this more talked about, and why is it better remembered? I can't answer that. It's just, that's where we are with ourselves. You know, this is, in a way, this is, somebody had mentioned about how Ben Affleck was kind of corrupt from the beginning. He looked the other way all the time. This is acceptable behavior in our business lives. Well, it's in the gray area. It's neither right nor wrong. It's certainly not illegal, but is it kind? Is it ethical? You know, I can do that because I'm going to take home more than 6 figures this year, or 7 figures, as in the case of the partners. So it's like, it's a critique of all of us people who work for a living, in the little compromises we make, and what a slippery slope it can be. This is where we've all progressed to, or at least as far as 2002, when it was made. And this is what we have to watch out for, is ourselves. You know, and Barbara, thank you for your, Barbara Balaban, who's off screen. Thank you for that comment. You're exactly right. This is who we are and what we have to watch out for in ourselves. And this is a great function of movies. And I think it also, from Mitchell,
hold on. Barbara just was going to comment back, and then Mitchell.
I think it also reflects our societal. I think it also reflects our societal values. He was just steeped in what society will allow and what he allowed in himself, because success, it excuses his morality often, and that's, I think, what you were talking about, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. Mitchell?
Mitchell.
Jim, thank you so much for finding this film 20 years ago. I don't know why I didn't see it. And I was curious as to how you came upon this film. And also, we just came back from seeing Power of the Sale with Bryan Cranston, and I highly recommend it.
Okay, thanks for the recommendation. I don't know. I saw this several years ago when I started the University Synagogue Film Group, because I was looking for films, and it just seemed like, from its description on Amazon, it had a possibility. But I sort of pushed it aside, and I pushed it further aside when somebody said, "Oh, that's too dark to show to our group here." And I'm you know, it's like harder to find films like this. So I went back into my wish list, and believe me, there are other wonderful films, but I'm not going to pull films out of the past for you people to see when they're so dated. Although Gentleman's Agreement, 1937, with Gregory Peck, was a great film for us, because it was so topical about how the sin of anti-Semitism is about the people who remain silent. I mean, so topical and so current, so inspired. This film just seemed to like drip from the self-examination we need as a culture and as a society to say, where are we? Where am I? What compromises do I make? Where do I give myself the freedom to skate a little bit, you know, on the moral scale for profit, or with my family or my relatives, or whatever it is. It's like it calls us to be stewards of ourselves, you know. It's like, it's not, it's the, to call, well, I don't want to get into scripture because I'm a novice.
As far as morals are concerned, we just finished watching Misha and the Wolves, and
well, that's
a different story.
It is a very different story, and I didn't program that for a reason. And if you want to duke it out later, we can in private. But I love films like this, and this is exactly the kind of film that I've been trying to bring to us for the last 4 years, that provoke us to examine ourselves and our society, and wrestle with it. And ultimately, I think it's personal responsibility. You know, scripture aside, commandments or mitzvot aside, it's like, how are we going to live our lives? And sometimes it just takes something secular like this to shake us up a bit. And that's certainly why I went into the film business and tried to do good. Not that it's possible, although I never forged anybody's signature, at least to my memory. So
I just want to comment, Jim, that I think that this is, I believe, the 50th film that the Film Society has discussed. I've been keeping a running list of all the films that we've talked about, with a whole host of ethical and moral issues to talk about. So I wanted to congratulate you, because I think it's a momentous thing to come to 50.
Thank you. You know, the members, the participants reinforced this and let me know I was on the right track of doing something that you'd appreciate. So it's our golden anniversary.
Thank
50
you, sir.
films, that's a lot. I want you to know it gets harder to find them, but new films are made all the time. And I really want to see Coda in 2 weeks. Coda is about a deaf family with one hearing child. And it's sort of the opposite of Sound of Metal, which we did see and discuss, which is a profound examination of what deafness means to somebody who was once hearing. And Coda's it's not about punk rock musicians. It's about a single family that copes with this. Now, here's the thing. It's on HBO Plus, or I believe. And I looked into it.
Apple.
Apple Plus, sorry. I get my pluses mixed up. I believe you can buy a single rental to that. And let's try for that, because you're going to love that film. It's fun, it's moving, it's happy, it's sad. It really gives you an insight into deafness and how people live with it. Not how it's just how they cope with the change to it, but how a family copes. And it's a fun, great, satisfying film. So please try and see if you can locate it. If you can, you don't have to see it now, but if people are up in arms because it's on Apple Plus and can't see it, let me know. We'll do something else, but it's so worth your time.
How do you spell it?
Excuse me?
How do you spell it?
Oh, CODA. Coda. It's like the reprise at the end of a musical movement.
Jim, it's being shown for free admission in the movie theaters this weekend.
Oh, is that because of the Academy consideration?
Yes.
I believe it's one of the
you don't
10
have to
best.
show a card. It's to anybody.
Well, run to see it. It'll even be better on a big screen. It's lovely. It's beautiful. It's moving. It's fun. It's a great night out if you can brave the COVID menace that's out there. And I think you should. This is one that's worth it. So thanks for a very lively discussion tonight. But dude, let me know if we can't all see Coda, then we'll see something else. But I think you can all do it. It just takes a little internet sleuthing. My advice is ask a grandchild, right? They'd love to come over and show you how to do it, right? If you need an excuse to see your grandchildren, this is a good one. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
good
thank
night,
you.
everybody. Thanks for a lively
Good night.
discussion. Bye.
Thank you.
It was good.